So again, thanks for coming, everybody. I wanted to thank everybody for showing up and thank 801 Labs and DC801 for letting me speak today. This is my first presentation. It's about personal information security, just the basics. We talk about a lot of hacker stuff here, but I just wanted to go back to the basics because a lot of people don't really consider some of the small things. A lot of times we get deep in the weeds. So just wanted to talk about things like password management, how to protect your own information from being stolen by third parties, things like that. So who cares? Like, everybody should care. You're all using cloud services. All your information is out there. Different parties have access to it. If you're using any kind of a cloud service, which everybody does, Gmail, iCloud, then you have data out there. It doesn't matter that you have nothing to hide. Good intentioned people, your family, could just use your computer after you're using it. They log into your email, see things that maybe you don't care if they see, but it's your data. You should be able to secure it. They can see your information without your knowledge. Evil intentioned people will steal your information, spy on your webcam, embarrass you. Malicious companies, not every company is malicious, but they track your information for marketing, advertising. If you lose your privacy, you can be embarrassed publicly. You can be stalked, be put in physical danger, lose your job, lose money, lose your kids, tarnish your reputation, and you can really go crazy trying to correct the fallout from a breach. So a lot of famous people have already been hacked, and they kind of give us some lessons. Like, for example, Sarah Palin in 2008 had her Yahoo email breached, and it was actually really easy for the attacker to do that because she answered her security questions honestly. They knew where she went to school, they knew her birth date, so they were able to get into her Yahoo account. The attacker did leave a digital trail, included his IP address. He used a proxy server, but the proxy server had his IP address, and the investigators just subpoenaed that information. He also posted his own email address to 4chan, along with some of the details of the hack. There was a famous incident in 2014 where a bunch of celebrities had their private photos stolen and put out on the internet for everybody to see. They just used brute force and social engineering to pull that off. Phishing attacks, sent an email saying, "We're Apple. We noticed something fishy. Reset your password." They clicked the link, didn't notice that they weren't actually on Apple's website, reset the password, and then the attacker got their photos and all of their iCloud information. Matt Honan was a really famous one. He was a reporter for Wired. I think he still is. He basically had his life destroyed. It's really not funny, but the thing that is funny is they were only going after his Twitter handle. His Twitter handle was @Matt, M-A-T, and that's all they wanted. But in order to get that, they breached his Amazon account, Gmail account, Apple. All that the attacker needed in order to get his Apple account was the last 4 digits of his social security, or his credit card number, He used that to take over the Google account, deleted it, stole the Twitter handle. He had access to the iCloud account, so he erased his iPhone, iPad, and MacBook, and basically wiped out photos of his children that he can never get back. It doesn't matter that you're not a celebrity, or if you are, you're still a target. It doesn't matter. And some of these tips in this presentation, a lot of it is tips, but it's up to you to decide what your risk is and how much discomfort or inconvenience you're willing to go through to protect your information. So this is a quote from Matt Honan. "In many ways, this was all my fault. My accounts were daisy-chained together. Getting into Amazon let the hackers get into my Apple ID account, which helped them get into email, which gave them access to Twitter. Had I used two-factor authentication for my Google account, it's possible that none of this would have happened because their ultimate goal was to take over my Twitter account. So that's a lesson right there. Don't link your accounts together. If your iCloud account can be reset through your Gmail account and your Gmail account is poorly secured, then the attacker just needs to break into your Gmail account and then they get your Apple account. So don't link your accounts together. Use a password manager. In my opinion, my general rule of thumb is that a password that you can remember is not usually secure. That's not necessarily true. You can use a Diceware password. That's what I recommend doing for your system login, your phone passcode. But in general, on cloud sites, I like to use the longest password possible, and you just can't remember. You need to use a unique password for each site and the longest password possible. Random passwords are better. You can't remember 764 character passwords. It's not reasonable. So, in my opinion, always use a password manager. Use it across your devices because you want to be able to log into your services from your phone, tablet, PC. But when you do that, I recommend syncing locally. I don't know how KeePass does it. That's a good password manager. 1Password is a good one. 1Password I know has local sync, so you can just hook up to your Wi-Fi in your house and sync your vault across devices. I recommend doing that instead of putting it onto Dropbox. It might be secure on Dropbox, but you don't know who's accessing it. You don't retain the private keys to your Dropbox account. False answers to fake security questions, that would have helped Sarah Palin. If she had just been dishonest about where she went to school or made up a fake name of the school and didn't tell people her birth date, things that could be easily found about her with very little effort, then her email would have been intact. One thing that I wanted to mention is that when you enter a password incorrectly on a site, for example, you go to Facebook, you type in your Gmail account, your Gmail email address, and you accidentally type your Gmail password. Well, you just gave your Gmail password to Facebook, and you don't know for sure what they're doing with that information. It's probably logged in plain text for the site administrator to look at. If it was, then now that person has your Gmail password. If not, you still don't know what they're doing with it. They could be storing it in a database in plain text. In any case, you want to change that password if you ever do that. Establish two-factor login for important sites, and you want to retain some recovery codes because usually websites will have you use your phone number. They'll send you a text when you log in. What if you lose access to your phone? What if somebody goes to Verizon, uses a fake ID and pretends they're you, and they get a new SIM card? Now they can have your recovery codes. So this is one of those things. You have to decide what your risk is. What's the account that you're trying to protect? What's the risk that something like that's going to happen? Personally, I mix it up. There are some services that I prefer to use text, and there are some where I use an app. Personally, there's a Google Authenticator app you can download. You can just take a screenshot of a QR code, and it'll load those rolling two-factor authentication codes into the app for you to use. That's a good way to go, in my opinion. For some things, I don't like that because I question the recoverability of it. If you lose your phone, I don't know. So there are some password managers. 1Password is one where you can store the rolling code in the app itself. And around here, there's been a debate. I don't know who's right or wrong, but there is an option to store two-factor authentication codes in the app. If somebody gets access to your password vault, then that breaks the two-factor authentication. You don't need something you know and then something you have. if they have your vault, they have your password and your code. So that's up to you to decide. There is a difference between SMS-based and app-based two-factor authentication. Some people share passwords, like for iTunes or whatever. I recommend changing those every so often. You never know what your friend or relative or kid is doing with your password. Just as a side note, it is actually illegal, according to a law passed in 2013, for an employer to demand your social media password. You get to decide what you share online. You don't owe your employer access to your email, social media. They can't stand behind you and demand that you log in. Again, the cloud, you're just storing things on somebody else's hard drive. It's not any magic thing. Hopefully you guys all know that. Maybe you still own the data legally, and maybe according to the company's policy you still own your data, but it's out of your control once it's on somebody else's server, unless you don't have it encrypted and you know that it is. Dropbox, for example, holds the private key. They can, at least as far as I know, unless they've changed it, they can still read your data. I believe that that's still true, because if you've ever noticed, you upload a large file to Dropbox and sometimes it just syncs immediately. It's because they check the hash of the file. They already have a copy of that file on their server somewhere, so they just add it to your account. They don't have to upload a whole gig file. So to me, that makes Dropbox not secret. To me, it's not suitable for me to store password vault in. Also, with a third party, you don't know who's auditing their security. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, instead of using Dropbox, why not use something like Keybase.io?
Perfect. Yeah. I like that idea. You know, some password managers just support different things. KeyPass, I think you can probably just, drop the file on Keybase.io. It's probably a really good way to go.
It works for development too, because then you can share them, and then if you don't want to share that with them anymore, you can just revoke the key.
I love that idea. In fact, so I mentioned 1Password a lot, and I love the app, but they created this product, 1Password.com, and 1Password for Teams, and I hate it because I just don't agree with storing the vault online like that and having it out of your control. Keybase.io has a well-documented, well-researched, well-developed methodology for doing exactly what you're saying. So I love that idea. So I would do something like that as opposed to Dropbox, personally. Even if you're trying to do everything right, eventually a website's going to get hacked. Their database will be dropped and stolen. It happens every day. You never know. You don't even know. Probably an account that you have right now has been hacked and they just don't know it yet. In fact, yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I've been doing to mitigate that is using soft puppets with PW10, 32-bit character string, randomly generated, stored in a password vault, and if it is compromised, it's not linked back to any email, because the email itself is a randomly generated string that goes to a randomly generated proton mail account. So.
Perfect. I love that idea. And that's another thing. I love the idea of using a different email address for each account. Why should... It can be complicated. This is where, if the risk is worth it, if the data that you're securing is so important, you may as well set up a different email account, do what you said. It's just better. You can check. There are various websites that will help you discover whether or not some of your data has been stolen. It's questionable whether or not you ever should put your email into those sites, because haveibeenpwned.com, I'm not saying... I think Troy Hunt's a good guy, probably. I don't know him personally, but the database that he has out there will comb through all kinds of breach data, and it'll tell you where your email address has shown up, and that'll help you discover if one of your accounts has been breached. However, yes.
So you can also use this as an attack vector by looking for accounts that you believe have been compromised. And then once you know that, you already have the username, so it's a matter of generating a password, so it's a reverse spray.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting to. I really believe that a lot of these sites are just honeypots, or I'm not sure what the right word is, but to do exactly what you said, to take that email address and then brute force the account, or come up with information that is probably part of their password and just break into their account. I just don't trust web developers in general, but some are really good, so it's up to you. Facebook, really, this is for all social media, but it's a sharing platform. They don't care. They make the motions about caring about your privacy, and they will follow the law when they have to, and can do that, but I just don't trust it. Privacy settings, they've had a history of rolling back privacy, so you set something to be only visible to a certain audience, and then the setting changes, and then it's visible to the public, and they'd never told you, you didn't know. I'm not sure about the legality of that, or maybe some glitches happened, or maybe there were policy changes, but the point is I just don't trust the privacy settings. Use them and hope that they work, but I don't trust them. Links that you click on social media, if it's unsolicited, it's questionable. And even if you think you're looking at the right link somebody sent you, it's not private, first of all. If you send a link to somebody over Facebook Messenger, Facebook scans their links for malware to see that it's not a phishing site. And there have been reports before where people have shared a Google spreadsheet link and found that it has been opened, even though they only shared it with one person on Facebook. It was opened multiple times, whether robotically or manually. So unless it's end-to-end encrypted, you can't really trust that that link hasn't been modified in transit. I take that rule for Facebook, Twitter, any site.
Are you going to talk about the anonymous character Unicode attack vectors phishing?
That's not part of it, but I would love to hear your input on that.
It got some press recently because there's a new malware that it'll be a link that looks like www.apple.com, and you click on it, but instead of like APPLE, it's Unicode characters that look the same in the font to your eye, but they actually are different characters, and so it will actually link to websites like www.09xa.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And so you click on it, and some browsers will even display that in the URL bar. It'll say apple.com. Like Firefox, you click on this fake link and you think you're on an Apple website, and it'll have the green padlock, but you're on a phishing site. The latest Internet Explorer, Edge, and Chrome, at least on Linux, will show the Unicode string underneath instead, so you can see that it's not Apple. But in Firefox, you have to go into About Config and change a flag to have it show the masked address.
That is really interesting, and I've seen before what you're saying is more sophisticated. I've seen cases where, there'll be a character like that where there's just a tiny dot on top of one of the characters. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to say, a simple reverse VPNS would get rid of that easily.
It would,
and
and
if you had an extension that could do so on every page that you opened, seems pretty useful.
do you know of an extension that does that? I'm just curious.
Develop extensions.
Developers. So I'll show you guys in a few minutes something about that, why you shouldn't trust that padlock, because sure, it looks like apple.com, the padlock is there, but if your browser is configured to show Unicode characters as if they were, what you think they are, then yeah, you can be tricked easily. So Facebook, the U.S. doesn't have right to be forgotten laws like they passed in Europe. You can delete all the posts you want. They'll just retain it on their server anyway, most likely. Definitely don't share private conversations. I just laugh I laugh and I feel a little worried for people sometimes when I see them like sharing when they're going out of town. Okay, your house will be empty. Where their kids go to school. Oh, all right. I guess we know who your kids are, where they go to school. Even dinner plans. I don't know. I just don't think private conversations are for Facebook. Definitely don't upload your ID cards. I've seen people post their own credit cards to Facebook. Mobile devices are a significant attack vector. Keep it updated, the OS. Android, it might be a little more difficult sometimes in some cases. I like Apple. It's a mixed bag. Yeah. You're chuckling? Yeah.
Yeah.
There are reasons for both sides. I mean, personally I use iOS, but it gives people a false sense of security for sure. Don't leave your phone unattended. People can just pick it up, and if there's I
just want to say, like, essentially with phone security, phone platforms and just phones in general are like the most exposed attack surfaces in probably computing right now. Like, they're horrible.
Oh yeah.
And so essentially the way I've always told people how they treat their phone is that don't put anything you don't want stolen on your phone. It's that bad.
That's kind of my rule, yeah.
Yeah.
Nude photos, all right, I don't see, yeah. You just don't take nude photos. They'll just be exfiltrated off your phone. Just don't take photos of anything. Yes.
Another thing is don't post pictures of barcodes. Like, there's people that they'll take a picture of their boarding pass or their plane ticket.
Oh, good
But
point.
the thing is, you can take that barcode and decode it and find their loyalty program number, and you get that. You can go on the website and cancel their flight.
Beautiful or frightening.
Nice attack.
So, in other words, use the permission controls, but kind of like Facebook, don't trust your phone at all. Don't install unsigned apps. Do what you can to protect yourself. Just know that you're not protected anyway. There will be a vulnerability that comes out. We feel secure, but there's probably a glaring hole. So don't install unsigned apps, specifically for Android. iOS, you can't really install unsigned apps, but that's not to say that there aren't malicious apps. You can jailbreak your iPhone or root your Android phone and install whatever you want, but then, in my opinion, and I don't think it's my opinion, you're significantly less safe.
So, I think that's good advice in general, but there is a large problem in the Google Marketplace right now with Chinese companies installing backdoors in their own apps to exfiltrate data back to the Chinese government.
And it's a signed app, right?
Oh yeah, it's
Signed, and it looks normal, but it's sending your data somewhere you don't even know. And you wouldn't even know unless you're monitoring the network traffic to see.
Yeah, I would say on top of that, just don't download things that aren't like generally accepted apps. Like photo editors is a really big one.
Agreed. Like, that's kind of one of my rules of thumb. Install as few apps as you can on any device that you can get away with, because the more applications you have, the more attack surface opens up. The more
Just run hardened BSD on your phones.
hardened BSD. That would be perfect. I mean, except you'd not be able to use it.
Basically, how the hell is.
So, specifically on iOS, turn off significant locations. That thing is just tracking you the whole time. It's buried way in the system services setting under location. It ostensibly is to help you get better traffic directions and specifically provide useful location-related information and maps, calendar, photos, and more That sounds pretty vague to me. If you go into privacy, location, system services, under significant locations and just look, it'll show you all of the recent locations you've been. And to me, that's a little creepy, especially when I never asked for that. And I specifically already set up the phone when it was new to turn that stuff off, and then I find that it's on. Product improvement and analytics. No, they don't need your help developing their product. They can come up with good ideas and do their own bug testing and all of that.
It's kind of
If-
funny how that data's an asset, but they never give you a refund for it.
Yeah.
They never really give you anything for
A
that.
step further, even if you uncheck that, the next update it'll be checked, and you won't know.
That's a good point. So again, like, don't even use your phone. I don't know.
Yeah, don't use
Like,
your
just
Don't
you just
even-
can't trust it. Like,
I remember when
Don't use it
those
for
were just
anything
for
you
making
can.
phone calls.
it's hard to say because you have to use computers. You have to use your phone. I'll just admit I keep my password vault on my phone, but I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Like, the best you can do is do everything you possibly can to keep it secure. Turn off Wi-Fi. Well, we'll get to that. So, use an anti-theft app on your phone. Find My iPhone, Pray, Lookout. They will help you keep it secure. Another thing, I never give out personally my real phone number to anyone ever for any reason, because occasionally, and it happens like every year it seems like, there's always a 0 day where they can send an SMS to your phone and there's some vulnerability that somebody discovered and it can just take over full root access to your phone. Why bother with that? Just don't give anybody your SMS number, in my opinion. Use an app, a third-party app. Also, it helps keep stalkers at bay if you really have annoying people on you. I would personally set a secret code with your carrier so that when you call them to make an account change or anything like that, you have to provide a password. That may not keep you secure either, but it's one step. It's one thing that is preventing somebody from taking over your phone number and then getting your two-factor authentication codes. Or just screwing up your life. I personally would use privacy settings on your phone to hide SMS content on your lock screen for the same reason, so that somebody can't just request a password reset and then, or they get your password and log in and then they just look at your phone and they can read the code. You don't even have to unlock it. And I would also lock the phone with a strong passcode if possible. 6 characters or longer. The longer the better. But probably don't use the thumbprint or Face ID. Again, it just depends on your risk, your convenience versus privacy trade-off that you have decided to make. But Face ID has already been proven not to be very reliable. Thumbprint, okay, well, they can just stab you and then put your thumb on your phone. So that's not very secure.
So what do you use to obscure your main phone number?
There are apps, so personally I would just use a different service. There are texting apps.
Right.
Those come with their own problems because you don't know
Right.
who is running that server. Signal is a good one. I like Signal because it's end-to-end encrypted. Personally,
It's vetted by the EFF and Snowden.
the EFF and who?
Snowden.
Oh yeah, right. I love the EFF. They're
I can tell.
yeah, you can tell. Well, we'll get to that. But again, turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on your phone. If you have Wi-Fi turned on, then your phone is constantly sending out probes looking for the networks that you've connected to. And if I have a Wi-Fi pineapple, which I do, then I can just convince your phone to connect to my device, and then you know, I could get a range of things, but at the minimum I can get your name without even knowing who you are.
I believe this is a feature in the new Android version where it scans for open networks, and if it detects one, it'll just join it.
Oh yeah.
I saw that and I was like, I'm turning that off.
One annoying thing about iOS is the new control center in the last version. You can open the control center, turn off Wi-Fi. You think it's off, but it's not. It just disconnects from Wi-Fi for 24 hours. So, okay, well, I'll just wait until the next morning, and then I'll have access to your phone again while you're asleep. Bluetooth, again, Bluetooth is a pretty vulnerable...
Ubertooth.
Yes, Ubertooth. Just turn Bluetooth off, especially if you've got photos on your phone that you don't want. Just exfiltrated through a Blueborn exploit. Most phones aren't vulnerable to that now, but there's always a new vulnerability. Photos, definitely check the EXIF data. If you don't want people to know where your location is, then you probably shouldn't have location services turned on. And if you do, then your camera is probably embedding that into every photo. You probably want to check the photo and remove that data before you share it with anybody. Facebook and Twitter, I believe, strip that from the photos before or as you upload it. However, I wouldn't trust that to keep you secure. Just definitely, just don't trust anything, I guess. Don't use public Wi-Fi. There are a lot of trade-off or caveats to that. I think it's the best rule. Just never ever even use it. Like, I don't even use the Wi-Fi here at the hackerspace, even though it's probably fine. I don't know. Yeah, I know. And then also, why not periodically just wipe out your phone and rebuild it? Reinstall the OS, like, as frequently as you can stomach it, honestly. Depending on your risk versus convenience trade-off that you have made. For your local computer, tape over the webcam, why not? I mean, it seems silly, but it really is a good idea. Definitely use a password on your machine. I mean, there's no reason not to use at least a basic password on your computer. If you really want to, scan the ports on your machine. See what services are vulnerable. You can use Nmap. Just do Nmap localhost, Nmap 127.0.0.1. You'll see all of the services that your computer has open. Some of them may be vulnerable. Some of them might not be, but it's your right to know what is open on your machine. Personally, I don't even like antivirus, but use it. Especially if you're on, well, I want to say especially Windows. Windows has gotten better, but it's the largest attack platform, except for maybe Android. So use AV if you really have to. I still don't trust it. Don't trust it not to send some of your data off to a third party without your knowledge, because it's looking for malware, and if it sees something it thinks is malware but isn't, it will just send it off to their server for analysis, and maybe that was photos you didn't want to get out. Again, I would install the fewest possible applications on any device. The more you install, the more risk you have. Don't even download illegal software. Not because, well, for a couple of reasons. Yes.
So I have a good story about not downloading illegal software. I'm not going to say any names, but I know someone who put a botnet in some version of Photoshop. In particular, it went after engineers. So they would install programs like Illustrator, Adobe, Photoshop to set up like documents for power plants. And one of their botnets happened to get into a Chinese power plant. So yeah, don't pirate software all the time.
It's definitely a bad
idea.
idea.
There's botnets in it.
Probably all of them.
I was just curious, is that what you meant by don't download it illegally, or is there software that's illegal? I'm not clear on that.
Oh, no, I meant don't download it
Don't
illegal.
download it
I'm sure there's
Okay.
I don't know if
So
there's
like,
software
is
that's
there
illegal
software
to
that's,
own, to be honest.
Want to see some illegal software?
That'd be cool.
Come see me after.
Probably the NSA.
Do you have
can't download
The
it.
NSA toolkit.
Yeah. Cool, thanks.
I mean, yeah, plus, okay, people should be paid for their efforts, whatever. I mean, if it's a good development team, then your money is helping support them in the first place. That's really a good reason, but from the security standpoint, probably every piece of software, illegal software, has some botnet in it. I mean, why wouldn't you throw, well, I'm not a criminal, so I wouldn't do that, but, you know, if somebody's downloading illegal software, I guess they're kind of a target. Customer improvement programs, same thing as on the mobile device. Just turn that off, because they don't need your help. If they do need your help, then they should offer you a job and pay you money to help them develop their software. Jar files, just don't even bother. Like, keep Java off your machine if you can. If you have to install Java, I just say wipe out the whole machine and then reinstall the OS, or at least delete it when you're done with it. But just don't even use Java and don't click jar files. Personally, if you have to do something like that, I would do it inside of a virtual machine, or use an OS that's not persistent, like boot from a USB drive. Also, virtual machines can be escaped in some cases. I don't really know the mechanics of it. Yes.
So the way that you do it is you send scripted commands to the virtual machine itself to change specific parameters about the virtual machine. So for instance, it's a single core machine, give it dual core. It has to send out a signal pack so you can connect to that port. And as soon as you do, you're in.
Beautiful. I knew it was possible.
There's sort of like a DEFCON talk about it where they are trying to break out of virtual machines so that they can keep a persistent video feed.
Oh,
and
wow.
change the feed without getting the guard's attention.
So even if you open malicious files in a virtual machine, a sophisticated attacker will still attack you.
Yeah, it's probably been patched by now, I imagine.
Probably been patched, but again, we never know the state of software and development. macOS had a bug recently where you could just type root and hit enter twice, and then you have.
That was brilliant.
That was beautiful. I mean,
Assume if a state actor wants to get into your machine, or escape a virtual machine for that matter, they will do it.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop them. So personally, I would use a separate device entirely. If you have a file you really need to open, hopefully you have a home lab. If not, just wipe out a spare machine, reinstall an OS, open it on that machine, and then consider that machine completely compromised. If you think it's a state actor, then I would probably never use that machine again, because they could have modified the what's it called?
Firmware.
Yeah, the firmware, the
Hard drive, the bootloader, and all that stuff.
bootloader. Yeah.
An evil main attack especially is especially sinister.
I mean, if it's just like some malware I found on a forum or something, I'm probably not going to be that paranoid, but
There was a time in which I once had my bootloader on a flash drive, and I left it somewhere and never used the operating system again and I lost like a bunch of awesome code because I did not want to plug that flash drive in after I left it somewhere. If you boot from a flash drive, that is, you take that into consideration.
if it's out of your sight, you don't know what happened to it.
Yep.
I just do my malware analysis on my mom's computer. It's gonna.
Yeah, it's a good
I think a
idea.
lot of people do that.
Just change the language settings to Russian.
So, anyway, that's that. As far as Wi-Fi goes, I would personally, if you go out somewhere, you're not at home, you're not going to be using your home network, just remove that home network from your list of trusted networks, because if your device is sending out that probe looking for a trusted network and somebody has a device that's sending a signal back saying, I am that trusted network, then your phone will connect or your laptop will connect. And on that same vein, don't use a personally identifiable name for your Wi-Fi, whether you're at home or not, doesn't matter. If somebody knows that that's your Wi-Fi and they're targeting you, then you've helped them. Like, you took a step out of their process by telling them exactly which network to target. So, in the vein of what you just said, keep an eye on your environment. The device is plugged into your machine. USB keyloggers are easy to hide. The LAN turtle connected to an Ethernet port can exfiltrate data. It can also become a persistent shell on your network to perform further attacks. So keep an eye on things if you really care about it. Don't leave your devices unattended.
I found in a hotel once, I found an intercessionary
And this was taking some
dongle that was plugged in between the keyboard and the hotel's machine in the little public area.
So we're probably logging everything everybody was typing. So they got people's email addresses, and then immediately after that, the passwords.
Yeah, it was an actual piece of hardware that the keyboard was plugged into, and it was just a pass-through that the USB was plugged into. I'm like, that's kind of creepy looking.
And it was probably a $40 device, cost
Yeah.
them hardly anything to pull off that attack. And it is critical to keep a keylogger off of a device that holds your password vault, especially if you do what I was mentioning before and put your two-factor authentication codes in your vault. Because if you do that and they get your vault password, then just give up on everything.
If I'm not mistaken, I think KeyPass has ways to make sure that, or to at least try to get around these issues. If it's a hardware keylogger, then it's
Sure.
done. But I think KeyPass actually, when you're typing into whatever they have, if you're on Linux, maybe I think that is.
Huh.
But I think they have ways that they obfuscate the key presses, so you can't. So like an attacker, if they're doing like a naive, like any sort of run-of-the-mill malware with a keylogger on it, isn't just going to be. It's going to be obfuscated. They're going to get a bunch of keys, and they won't know what the actual password is.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not as familiar with KeyPass because I only use it in
KeyPass is-
some cases,
yeah.
and there are also different versions of it. So
Yeah, KeyPass is the most sophisticated, I think, password manager. I think on the not even it's not on the market. It's open source, but
Right.
available today. Yeah.
it's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Like one of the more trusted ones,
Yeah, for
in
sure.
my opinion. And if you have data, again, you never know if your machine is going to be compromised, how it's going to be compromised. If there's some data you really need to keep secure, build an encrypted file container. Use VeraCrypt. Build a container. You can set a password. You can use key files so that you have to have a password and a file that maybe you store on a USB drive. There are different ways of managing it, but say that you have your Bitcoin wallet, for example, stored in an encrypted container. Your wallet's not online, and your machine gets compromised. They probably won't be able to steal your wallet. Until you open it, until you open the container and they get your password, maybe that will give you enough time to at least see that you're compromised and do something about it. And I would definitely use full disk encryption. Even if you're using separate encrypted containers, definitely encrypt your entire hard drive, because say that you use a password on your machine, but you leave it laying somewhere, your password doesn't protect your data. I can just plug in a USB drive, pull everything, load a different operating system, upload things to the internet, whatever. So definitely using encryption and full disk.
I will also add too that BitLocker and FileVault don't necessarily have like the greatest of reputations,
For sure.
especially in the cryptography world. But what you can do is make sure that the disks you use in your computer are Opal 2, which isn't the best standards, but it does full disk encryption on the disk, and it has the keys stored like the keys encrypted as well through it. So that way, if anybody does have like access to it in some way, maybe if they have a FileVault or BitLocker kind of attack on it, still the data is still encrypted on the hard drive itself. So if they're trying to get it through software and not through mechanical means, that's a way to kind of get around it too.
So you're saying even with FileVault enabled, then there's a separate layer of encryption?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So it happens at the software level, and then it happens again on the hard drive level.
That's Opal?
I think Opal 2.
Opal 2? That's good to know.
It's
Like,
great because when you're wiping disks, it's all you have to do is just delete the key off the hard drive, and it's good. Yeah, they do some
That's
weird.
really
They do
cool.
some weird stuff with TPMs and things like that. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. I should have known that for this presentation, to be honest. But
It's like an
Um,
enterprise thing, so it's not really like a consumer thing.
okay,
It's in like ThinkPads right now, I think.
that's the thing. I mean, a lot of consumer
Is there
devices
an
just
open
aren't
source
built.
alternative to that?
For Opal 2?
Yeah.
No, Opal 2 is a pretty proprietary or standard, I think, actually.
Probably with a hefty licensing fee.
Sounds
Maybe.
like a
I
fun
think so.
person project.
So those are all good tips. I mean, I mentioned File Vault and BitLocker just because that's what Apple and Microsoft give us easy access to, and it's better than just leaving it unencrypted for sure. But I like that idea a lot better, having a second layer that's more trusted, more vetted, especially by cryptographers.
Also, yeah, VeraCrypt as well is just so amazing.
That's good to hear because I know that there was some question when TrueCrypt abandoned the project and then VeraCrypt took it over.
As far as I haven't actually done a lot of research on that one, but I know that there is a lot of controversy. Like, is there some hidden backdoors in TrueCrypt? And then since VeraCrypt is a fork of it, everybody's like, oh, what if? And I'm just like, I use Lux, so. so that's,
Right.
TrueCrypt was in the process of being audited when they stopped.
Yeah,
That's
they
right.
did
And
finish.
Right.
they did complete the audit of it.
Yeah,
And
VeraCrypt also got an audit as well.
They did.
Yeah.
Do you know who
They cleaned
audited
up all
that?
of them.
Who it was?
Not off the
That's
top of my
okay.
head.
No, yeah.
That's okay, but yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember there was a controversy about it, but I still trust it. I trust it on top of other layers of trust that I've built
Yeah.
for protecting data.
Defense in depth.
And again, why not rebuild your PC? Frequently. In fact, I have a laptop that I rebuild every week. I mean, it's the one that I just click on every random link. Hacker forum links, like it's for sure been compromised. So if I do anything like that, I definitely rebuild it like that day. I don't do anything with it. And I don't do anything sensitive or important on that laptop anyway. It's really for research. So
How much free time do you have?
that's a good point. So again, convenience versus
On it. I mean,
the main laptop, main computer. Maybe you don't have the time for that all the time, but
Just mirror the drive.
that's
At
a
that
good
just-
point.
you can save time just by mirroring the drive.
Yeah, I've been meaning to set up that process because it really is like an 8 to 12 hour process to like rebuild everything. But I have it mostly automated now. So good points. Again, convenience versus.
It's not too hard to maintain a second machine and just boot it from a thumbstick if you're going to browse something really spurious.
That's my opinion too. Like, don't even use the OS installed on the drive. Using the USB thumb drive is a beautiful way to just do some research without having to rebuild it all the time. Browsers are just generally untrustworthy. I mean, click on whatever you want, but know that bad things could happen. I use multiple browsers personally. My opinion is, why not browse memes in one browser and do your banking in the other? What's up?
That sounds like a great use case for Cubes OS.
I agree. I just have never done the research into cubes.
Set it up on a desktop and prepare to struggle. But it's fun until it's not.
Well, it's probably more secure than just using two browsers installed on the same OS. I would probably give you that for sure. I've been meaning to do some research into cubes because I hear that it's really good. But, huh?
It's really hard.
Really?
to
It
use.
is quite difficult to use. There's a learning curve.
Okay. That's probably just what I never got
It's
past.
not. I don't know if it's necessarily hard so much as just you're not used to it. It's a different paradigm altogether.
It's on my list of new security.
Yeah, I mean, if you're used to working in hypervisors and switching back and forth between them and sending data from one hypervisor container to the next, you'll probably be okay.
Okay. So is there a way of sharing like just a folder across different?
Yes, but it's frowned upon.
Okay.
So you can
As
can
it should
share,
be,
You can
but-
share things across, right? Obviously,
Okay.
a couple of different ways you can do that.
I'll have to look into it because I've been told that a few times. But for now, I just use multiple browsers. People don't really like Opera. I mean, it's kind of a joke, I guess, but I kind of like Opera personally because the latest version has a built-in ad blocker. It blocks cryptocurrency mining by default now. Definitely use HTTPS everywhere. In my opinion, it's a great extension created by the EFF. They put a lot of work into it to make sure it works well and doesn't break websites. I like to use the feature in HTTPS everywhere where it actually blocks any unencrypted request, and then it'll break sites once in a while, but you're aware that the site is trying to pull data in an insecure way from the server. Privacy Badger is another extension that just helps you protect yourself from being tracked across websites. So you go to Facebook, and then you go to walmart.com, for example, and now Facebook knows what you were looking at Walmart. Privacy Badger helps mitigate that quite well. Definitely turn off JavaScript. It breaks a lot of things on the internet, but why not turn it off until you see that something is broken? It's more secure, in my opinion. As far as trusting the padlock, you don't want to browse personal websites on computers and networks owned by your employer or an untrusted device or network. You're on your employer's machine and you type facebook.com. You see the green padlock, looks fine, right? But they've installed Zscaler, maybe, which is a system that redirects all of the traffic. It breaks the encryption. They install a root certificate on your machine so that it encrypts it between your machine and Zscaler, but they own the private key to that. So they can read your information. So you go to facebook.com, type in your password, Zscaler has your password now. Effectively, your employer has your password. They may not be doing anything malicious with it, but that's your data to protect, in my opinion. This is kind of an example of what a certificate looks like. You'll open the padlock, look at the certificate, it says issued to facebook.com, but it says issued by Zscaler. It doesn't say Facebook Inc. It doesn't say the name of a certificate authority. It says Zscaler, and it's a root certificate, which means that they installed that on your machine. So to mitigate that, you can verify this SSL certificate thumbprint using a secondary network. You can do it on the same network. I don't trust it. If you're at work, I would say pull up your phone and go to grc.com. I'll show you a little example. You can go to grc.com, and under services, there's a thing called HTTPS fingerprints. And you can type in any website here, but it has a lot of the basic sites, Facebook, PayPal. It'll show you the fingerprint of that site. So what you'd want to do if you're questioning whether or not there's a man in the middle between your machine and the end site, for example, your employer or the library, you'd maybe pull up on your phone grc.com, go to fingerprints, look at the fingerprint on that certificate, and let's just try Facebook. If it will open. I can see Facebook's thumbprint right here. Ideally, you'd be doing this on a different network, not the same machine or network, but this is pulling it from GRC's ISP. If the certificate hasn't been compromised, then it should be fine. But again, just do it on a different network. Pull up the certificate. You see verified by DigiCert. Open it. View the certificate. You can see this fingerprint here, BD258C ends in 36. And that's what GRC told me on the separate network that I checked it on. So if those values match, then it's encrypted. Your data is encrypted at least between your browser and the end site. It doesn't mean that there's not a keylogger on your machine. It doesn't mean there's not some other malware, but at least the traffic isn't being spied upon in transit. So I would always verify the SSL certificate. Don't trust the green padlock. Personally, I don't install a password manager extension in the browser. There are different philosophies on that. I think it opens up a risk if you have that extension installed, because if something compromises your browser has access to your passwords and can exfiltrate the passwords back to the malicious site. However, another way of looking at it is if you do trust the browser not to be compromised, 1Password, for example, and I think LastPass, although I don't use that one, some of the password managers will show you that you're actually trying to enter your password on the wrong site. It says facebook.com, but it's a Unicode attack, and you're not seeing that it's not really facebook.com, but your browser password manager, well, not the browser password manager, your external password manager, the extension will notice that you're not actually on that site. So there are a couple of ways of looking at it. I just don't like installing extensions as much as possible, just because they open you up to more risk. Search engine wise, I would use one that doesn't just track you everywhere like Google. DuckDuckGo, Start Page, or a couple. I know there are more. I like DuckDuckGo. Probably you don't really have a reason to remember your browser history. That just makes it so that somebody can pick up your phone and see what you're looking at. I mean, not that you necessarily care, but that's just one thing. Email. A lot of people don't really know that email is sent in plain text from server to server unless it's encrypted. It's like a postcard. You trust the mailman to deliver it, but it doesn't mean he's not reading it. So encrypt your email if appropriate. Use new PGP. Personally, I don't respond to unsolicited email. That just tells an attacker that somebody exists there. If you unsubscribe from a spam email, if it's a legitimate company, they'll unsubscribe you. If it's not, and it's an attacker, then you just told them that that email is active and somebody's checking it, and they'll click on links that are sent to it. So if it looks fishy, it probably is. A lot of companies don't let you avoid it, but try to avoid resetting passwords by clicking links in the email, and only do that if you actually requested the password reset. If you didn't, then go directly to the site and see if there really is a problem. Reset your password from there if you need to. VPNs are kind of an interesting topic, in my opinion, because a lot of people just think that, oh, I'm using a VPN, it's all private, it's all secure. No. Thank you. You're not actually making it necessarily more secure. You're just shifting the trust from your ISP to the VPN. The traffic may still well be encrypted, but the VPN knows what sites you're going to. It's just not Comcast that knows. Comcast knows you're going to the VPN, but the VPN knows you're going to Facebook. So the VPN ends up becoming your ISP, sort of. And especially if they're routing your data overseas, it may even be, you may be shooting yourself in the foot if your intention is to be more private, retain your privacy. Data routed overseas is subject to long-term data storage by the NSA. If an encryption algorithm is cracked in the future sometime, they will have that data. Data routed within the US is subject to US privacy laws, which is actually what you want. You're more protected, yeah.
I seem to remember hearing something in the news recently about legislation where ISPs could have your browsing history or something like that, where as previously they couldn't. Does that sound right?
That rings a bell. I didn't follow that news. However,
Are you referring to the thing that just recently happened? That I think it's been debated.
It was
that
part of the net neutrality.
net neutrality is part of that.
Yeah. I just thought that there was some change in, previously ISPs didn't know your browsing history and now they do. And I was just wondering what the implications of that.
they could always tell where you're going
Yeah,
to.
they can
They can always take
send
photos,
you-
right?
They could always tell which sites you're trying to go to on the internet. I think.
They're allowed to monetize it now.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the change? Okay.
I think that what that was is they're allowed to sell your data now to other third parties.
I used to work for an ISP. We could tell what sites.
You know, smoke up these two.
Ad injection. That's
That must have been interesting,
nasty stuff.
in my opinion.
Comcast does JavaScript injection all the time.
Yeah, they do. That got so annoying when I forgot to pay my bills. I would always know when they would inject like something right in my page and be like, oh, I hate this. It's so weird.
And that's a good point. If your traffic isn't encrypted, then they can put whatever they want in the code on its way to your browser. And if your system has an exploit, it may not be malicious, it might just be Comcast reminding you helpfully that you have a bill to pay.
Or it
but
could be your shifty VPN operator.
exactly.
It's not malware, it's banalware.
So make sure your traffic is encrypted. Opera has a thing they call VPN in the browser. It's not.
shutting down.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they announced yesterday. I think it shuts down on the 30th.
Oh, interesting.
Why?
It's a Chinese company. I wouldn't trust it, but there was an article. I think it was on Slashdot. They said that they're shutting it down for the iOS and Android. April 30th is the last day that it'll be available.
Oh, interesting. Huh. I mean, it's too bad in a way, even though I never totally trusted it to begin with, and it's not a true VPN in the first place.
As a general rule of thumb, don't trust a free VPN.
I love that rule of thumb.
I would say with the exception of maybe Proton VPN.
Proton VPN?
Same.
I haven't
People's
used
Proton
them yet, but
They route traffic to the Mossad, FYI, if that's something you need to worry about. So I've heard.
Where did you hear this from?
They take investments from Israeli companies that are affiliated with the Mossad.
We'll talk about this later.
Okay.
that would be interesting. So anyway, that VPN, it's not a real VPN. It only covers the traffic going through your browser anyway, and I wouldn't trust it. Some of the critical data you definitely just don't even want to share. SS, your social security number, home address, pet names, children's names, all of that can be used to compromise your accounts. Birth date, place of birth. If you have an account that you don't care about, even Facebook, for example, even if you care about it a little bit, why do they need to know your birth date? You can tell your friends your birth date on your own. They don't need to know it. Your IP address, I would personally try to obscure that if you can, if you feel you need to, and if it's worth the effort. Location coordinates, people can stalk you. Bank account numbers, credit card numbers. There is no reason to take a photo of your credit card because it has a cool picture on it now and post it to Twitter. Photos of your ID you should never send to Facebook. I know that some places will demand it, and like for legal reasons, if you open a stock brokerage account, they will require you to send your ID, but if you have the option, maybe don't email it unencrypted.
Pretty much every cryptocurrency exchange nowadays, if you want advanced verification, they need copies of sensitive IDs, driver's license, passport.
Unless you use a
Exactly.
Chinese exchange.
So use a Chinese exchange,
Yes.
or but probably not though. Or at least if you have to do that, hopefully it's a browser-based upload where you can verify the SSL certificate, see that your traffic isn't being intercepted, and it's going directly to that cryptocurrency exchange. If you see that your account's been compromised, change your password. Consider yourself lucky that you even have the ability to change your password, and change it on all of the sites where you use that email address. Because if they have your email address and your password, they're probably going to try that password on multiple different sites because a lot of people just recycle their passwords. It's an incredibly bad idea.
This is where a password manager comes in handy, because you can look at it and say, I've got these 50 sites I use this email address on, I need to reset all those passwords.
Good point. You can go right into your password manager, see exactly where that email is being used, and you can also see when the accounts were created and when the password was created. So even if you don't think you've been compromised, why not change your password? If it's been 5 years since you changed your bank password, you may as well just change it if you notice that that's a problem. If your account's been compromised, change your username. Check the account for suspicious activity. You want to review any logs that the provider will give you. Somebody may have logged in without your knowledge. If it was your email account, check the sent folder and make sure that they didn't set up forwarding to forward all of your emails out to their own address. They can reset your accounts that way. So again, feel lucky if you can retain access to your account, or go crazy because you just lost all your kids' photos and access to your bank and all of that. Or fake your own death, start over in a new country if you really need to.
Great time to do it.
I'm not unconvinced of that. Traveling, in my opinion, if you're traveling, why not store your most important things somewhere online where you can get to them? If you're crossing borders, especially between countries, you never know who you're going to encounter at the border. You might want to wipe your phone out entirely, even though that might make you more scrutinized by the border authority. They might wonder why you wiped out your phone. It's none of their business. You have a right to your privacy. They can scrutinize you, but
Now, you have a right to your privacy here. On the Ukrainian border, it's none of your business is seldom an answer.
that's a good point. Personally, I think you still have your right, but they may not think so.
We have a right
Yes.
to golf club.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just take out your hard drive and mail it to wherever you're going.
Say that
When
again?
you get there. Well, no, because you can get through supply chain interdiction, but if it's encrypted, then in theory, depending on.
Did you say use an encrypted
Not-
hard drive?
Because you
Encrypt it
can
and mail it.
mess with the firmware on it and take the key off. So the supply chain attack would
Okay, so
dissolve
it is
completely.
viable by supply chain interdiction. Okay.
Yeah.
You could also do something like, they have these little USB drives that you can barely even see. You could encrypt some data on one of these, hide it in your shoe, something like that.
You got with that though.
Sure.
Good luck talking yourself out of it.
Right, good luck. You're a terrorist now, but
I recommend you swallow it, retrieve it later.
that's actually the most secure, probably. So, I don't know.
If they can steal your kidney, they can steal your flash drive.
There you go.
Just
They
assume
wanted
that's
to get
true. So, I don't know. It's up to you to decide what is on your devices, what effort is worth going through to protect it. I just would erase the device, maybe put some dummy data on there. It's none of their business, in my opinion. Don't lie to somebody who's questioning you at the border, because that will just put you under further scrutiny. But you don't need to be tricked into giving consent.
What do you think about carrying Bitcoin across the border, like into a country maybe where it's
Don't
illegal?
do it.
Like, you think you should delete all the apps, basically make, on your phone, or like?
I would say hopefully you have the seed
Right.
to recreate your Bitcoin wallet.
With a seed that you can generate from passphrase.
Use NewCipher. Proxy re-encrypt it to a key that's located in the other country. Retrieve later.
Or try to use the mail. I don't know. I mean, good questions. And again, I think a lot of these things, there aren't necessarily absolutely correct answers in every case. You just have to decide what you think is going to make you secure and what's worth going through 5 extra miles to secure. EFF is really a good resource for this subject. They put out multiple guides about not only information security, but traveling across the border and keeping your things safe. Here are a couple of links, and I'll give you a link to the presentation if you like. So some final thoughts I have on all of this. Just encrypt everything. Know that some encryption algorithms have been broken over time, and we think we're safe, but maybe some of the ones we use now will be broken in the future, and the data you think is safe will no longer be in the future. Try to know who's watching. You know, you can try to see if there's a man in the middle. If you're out at the mall and you look at your phone and you're 20 miles away from home and you see that you're connected to your home Wi-Fi network, that's a red flag. Somebody's watching your traffic or trying to. If you click on the padlock and it says Zscaler, somebody's watching your traffic. So don't think you're not a target or you have nothing to lose. You have to live with the risk, but mitigate it. Or again, just fake your own death. But here's some additional resources. The EFF, again, has a really great one, the Self-Defense Guide. Surveillance Self-Defense Guide. There are actually multiple guides under that link, and they're all really good. Latera, who's a member here, wrote a really good guide to OPSEC. If you're really interested in a deeper conversation about this stuff, that link is really good. Goes into a lot of how to use Tor, how to use a burner phone, different things like that. The Smart Girl's Guide to Privacy, it's geared toward women, but I think it has a really good set of information for everybody. OSIntelTechniques.com, that's Michael Basil's site. He has a bunch of tools up there where you can do your own research into your social media accounts, see what you can find out about other people, whatever you want, but that's a good resource. I saw a talk at B-Sides that I will just mention really quickly. It was really good by Jaime and Marley, at Jaime and at MKR Ultra, Poning the Browser Exploitation Framework and Building Effective Enterprise Defenses. It was really geared toward enterprises. However, they went through a lot of browser-based attacks in that talk, and some ways of mitigating it. Just using Opera with HTTPS everywhere and Privacy Badger mitigated a lot of the attacks that they tried with the browser exploitation framework. And that's the Beef project. I didn't put a link for that up here, but if you're interested in the mechanics of how you would exploit a browser, the Beef project is a really good place to experiment. Veracrypt, based on TrueCrypt, and then 1Password, and I should have put KeePass on here, but so those are some resources. That's it. So what do you guys think?